Welcome to the Board Wrap-Up Show for March 2021. I'm your host, Sean Anderson for Ponca City Public Schools, and Shelley Arrott, our guest every month as we recap the Board of Education meeting. Shelley, thanks for being with us.
Well, good morning. Thanks for having me.
Well, of course, the Board of Education meeting was right before spring break,
Correct.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And
a little behind here.
Yeah,
break.
a little better late than never, right?
Exactly.
Every month, the Board of Education meeting starts out in a wonderful way with the Board of Education awards. Can you recap that for us?
Sure. We have a Certified Employee of the Month award, and this month in March, it went to Jason Collins. Jason Collins is new to Ponca City this year. He is our PE teacher over at Trout, and he coaches several sports. I will have to tell you about Jason Collins. The kids love him. The little kids love him. If anybody calls from Trout to talk to me, they say that he is the subject of their dinner conversation, which is always a good thing because that means he's building great relationships with kids, and we're glad to have him in Ponca City. The Support Employee of the Month for March was Kelly Fernicus. He is a custodian over at Washington Pre-K, and we just have 4-year-olds over there plus our staff, and they all love Kelly, and he fits in, great part of the team. In any of our teams, from the crossing guard to the superintendent, everybody is a team, and it takes us all to do what's right for our kids. Our friend of education, and we have so many friends of education, happen to be New Point Church, and they have really supported POHI through the pandemic. They've brought treats for the teachers, just trying to lighten the mood, and the McGinnity's have led that pathway, so we honored them in March.
Very good. The Board of Education meeting for March, right before spring break, also included an audit report. What was included in this report?
Well, this happens every year. As you know, public schools or any public entities are audited to the penny. We have checks and balances in place. We have every receipt that has to match. We have to justify every penny of taxpayer money, which is board approved. And we are audited, and it's an extensive audit. We keep our records, and a lot of them are online, and we have a team of auditors that come in every year and go through everything. And then they make a recommendation on ways that we can improve or findings that, where protocol was not followed. As you know, this has been a crazy year with COVID. We did not have one bobble on our audit report, and we seldom do. They may make a recommendation, and here's what I believe. If you're not purposely making a mistake, you correct it, you put safeguards in place to improve, and that's what audits are for. But she did not have any recommendation. All she could do, our auditor, was praise our financial department for their record keeping and information, and that was a real good feeling after a struggling year when you're trying to juggle so many plates. And I want to add this while we're on it. Our accreditation officer came Wednesday, a couple of days ago, and he had nothing but praise. And we have to have everything in order, all the drills, all the requirements, all the certifications, immunization records. He had some recommendations for us, but he said after this year, he said schools have just been having so many bobbles, and he said I can't even commend Ponca City Public Schools enough. And we try to do the right thing, and hey, we know we're not always perfect, but we practice education. You continue to grow, and that's what's important.
Absolutely. Every Board of Education meeting for Ponca City Public Schools includes a superintendent's report, and this is information that you compile by keeping updated with the legislative process down in Oklahoma City at the Capitol, and also, of course, as we've had over the last year, the COVID update for our district, the superintendent's report. Where do we begin?
Well, we'll start with the legislative update. You know that the legislature is in session right now, and things are really heating up, and they're getting busy. And I don't mean heating up like getting angry, but superintendents meet weekly via Zoom. Sometimes we meet in person. We used to meet in person, every Wednesday, and we have a legislative update with our organizations, COSA, OSSBA, and we talk about legislation that can affect schools. So I'm going to talk about two pieces of legislation today only. That will really have an impact on schools. And these are project bills that the leadership party wants to see in place. And one has to do with open transfers. There's several open transfer bills. And what this law would do would make it easier for students to move from one district to the next. Superintendents cannot deny a transfer if they have room in their classrooms for a student from a neighboring town. And I think this has come to play this session by complaints from parents on the COVID issue. Some schools opened, some schools didn't, some went to AB, and the governor wants parents to have the right to go to send their children to a school that works for them. With so many working parents, it was hard to do distance learning, total distance learning, or total AB. And I do believe this bill is going to pass. There are some concerns with that. What we have to do is we have to set board capacity limits for each grade level and each site. And if we have openings, we have to take an open transfer. There is some allowable criteria for denial, and that is if we're full to capacity, or if a student is on suspension, we have to honor that suspension. And that's always been the law. That hasn't changed. However, if there are excessive absences, we can deny the student, but the family can appeal to the local board of education, and then they can actually take it to the state board. Concerns for superintendents are if we fill our classes with students from other communities, what do we do when someone moves into our community? And our parents are the taxpayers. We get the ad valorem for our community. So our parents' taxpayers' dollars going to be going to students from other communities. And I don't have just tons of heartburn over that, because typically we don't have that many requests. Here's one thing that concerned us at first was that people would just start moving schools because of activities, sports, or fine arts opportunities, but OSSAA requirements would remain in place. So if you're granted a transfer, you have to sit out a year before you can participate. So those requirements would remain in place, and that language has changed. The other one is House Bill 2078, which is a change to the state funding formula. And if you don't know much about the state funding formula, it's very complicated and has many nuances and components. It's been in place in Oklahoma for over 40 years, and it's very, very stable. It's a great formula. Does it need some tweaks? Possibly, but House Bill 2078 would change the basis for state aid funding. Currently, we get to take a look back at our highest weighted average daily membership from the current year or 2 years previously. This bill proposes that we can only look at the current year or the previous year. And in a district, when you have declining enrollment, and we have been for the last several years, that it's hard to overcome, because you have to plan in advance how to save those dollars. And I may have told you this before, but 2 years ago, we knew that our funding, that our state aid was going to be down based on our enrollment by about 1.9 million. So we began immediately to start making those cuts so that it wouldn't affect our teachers or our students, trying to find ways to make the cuts. And I will tell you, payroll is 87% of our budget. So if you have to make major cuts like that in a year, I mean, you can't start reducing things in 1 year, $1.9 million, because you know what will happen is people will lose jobs. And we're very concerned about that. I'm really, really concerned about that. districts that are growing might not be so concerned about that, but our enrollment's been down every year, and it's a stabilization factor in the formula so that schools can remain stable and compliant. We need to know how many teachers we can hire. We can't plan innovative and creative programs if we don't know what our state funding's going to be. And we've made some momentum with the teacher shortage. 3 years ago, we had the historic teacher raise, and I'm just concerned that teachers don't want to be reduction in force is a RIF. And we don't want to have to do that. It could be devastating to the community even, because we are the largest employer in Ponca City. And if we have to cut staff, it's going to have an economic impact. So I am visiting with our local legislators about this constantly. But I do know that these two bills are partner bills of party leadership, the governor, the president pro tem, and the speaker of the House. So we'll see how it turns out. We are advocating a lot right now. Superintendents are, our groups are.
There's a lot to keep up with. The Board of Education meeting every month here in Ponca City, usually the second Monday of the month. And this board wrap-up show is a comprehensive dive into those topics. So we record the board meeting and then we post it, so it's available for people to view. And that I just touched on 2 bills today. There are hundreds of education bills. So right. Well, this is the Cliff's Notes version
absolutely
of the Board of Education meeting. COVID update, boy, that's got to be something to make you smile, because the numbers are much better for obvious reasons.
They are better, and I always provide an update, and someday I'm going to be glad when I don't have to do this anymore. Actually, I provided the information on our K County risk level, and Sean, as you well know, it was way over 100. It looks like from December 17th through January 28th, and it's been high the entire year. But then all of a sudden, mid-February, it drops down to the yellow risk level, 15.1, then February 25th, 11.2, still in the yellow, March 4th, 8.2, and it's remained pretty consistent. However, I told you on the radio show the other day, the OSDH is quitting reporting daily cases by county. They're just going to, the number of new cases in the state, and then they come out with the county risk level on every Wednesday. And on Wednesday, March 23rd, the county risk level jumped from 9.8 the previous week, which is in the yellow level, to 24.8, which is in the orange level. And actually orange 1 level, orange 2 starts at 25. So we are just fractions out of the orange 2 level. And of course, I didn't like seeing that. Our numbers have been low this week. We haven't had a contact trace. However, kids haven't been in school. So here's what our data shows us, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed. After we've been out on break and people travel, and we see an increase on anywhere from day 7 to 11. So that would be next week. But hey, I'm hopeful. I think we've got 12 people out affected, either on isolation or quarantine. We've got 1 isolation, 1 positive case, and that would not a contact trace because that person was not exposed or wasn't a close contact to anyone due to spring break. And then the others are family close contacts. So we're keeping tight with our CDC protocols and guidelines, and we'll ease up as those ease up, but we do not want to lose our momentum. Right. So I just shared data with the board in 1 month's time, from February 1 to March 1. February 1, we had first week of February, we had 260 people out on quarantine or isolation due to COVID. The week of March 1, we had 51 out. So extreme difference. This week is going to be really low. I am going to quit doing the weekend COVID update with such low numbers. Should they increase, I'll restart those, but I want to tell our viewers, we always have our data up to date on our website. And there is a link on the homepage, PCPS contact tracing data. So that's always up to speed. You can see which students are out, or not which students, the number of students or staff out at each building.
Right.
So that information's out there. Here's what I want to tell you about vaccine progress. We have had 467 of our employees have had at least their first dose. We have over 400 of our employees fully vaccinated. And as you know, the window has opened for all Oklahomans and for students 16 and older. So once you're fully vaccinated, 14 days or greater out, you are exempt from a close contact quarantine, unless of course you're exhibiting symptoms. So that's good. I know some of our parents are trying to determine what to do in regard to vaccines. And I know that some of our students are getting that and to stay in school. And I know some are worried about long-term effects as well, but that's going to have to be a family decision. So things are looking better. And I want to give a plug out to our community partners that helped us get vaccinated quickly: K County Health Department, White Eagle Health Center, and Phillips 66. It's amazing what a team effort can do.
Yeah, for sure. Incredible. Well, every Board of Education meeting includes the regular financial considerations. It's just something that is a part of the board, and it's a regular thing. Anything worthy of note on that, or was it pretty much
things? Our board has to approve everything, even a student fundraiser. Any money that we spend for regular contact tracks has to be approved. And Sean, our board agenda is sometimes 300 pages long. We have lots of yearly contracts, needs that come up. So it was pretty basic though.
Very good. There were some revisions to the Board of Education policy considering extracurricular activities, also student drug testing. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. And schools have policies for students who participate in extracurricular activities, and it's not just sports. It can be fine arts, any ag. It's a privilege to participate in activities, and we do random drug testing each month, and it's dialed up by students' ID numbers. I don't even know who's tested. The teachers don't, but there's one person who manages that. And we do drug testing for our extracurricular once a month. And I tell you, with COVID, that's been pretty irregular with our students not being in school. But I have to say, we seldom have issues with positive drug tests for extracurricular. So we kind of set some guidelines with that. We noticed that our practice wasn't consistent with our policy. And whenever you have issues like that, you need to update. And what we're seeing is our previous policy said that the first offense was 25% of the season. Well, if you're a soccer player and it happens at the end of the season, how's that fair to a band person whose season is all year long? So we've got some equity talking about the offenses. 30 days, but the student still gets to practice. They have to miss at least 2 competitions, and they can actually reduce that if they get drug counseling, or there's some other options to help reduce that. And we want to help our kids grow and improve. And I'm telling you, kids are going to make mistakes, and a mistake doesn't define them for life. So it's all of our jobs to help them improve. And then the second offense is a little more rigid. It's 18 weeks suspension from activities. So it makes it consistent for all activities. Some activities are short, some are all year. So
Right.
We don't have a major problem with that. And I'm so proud of that. And our kids work hard. So occasionally we do, but not often.
Yeah, they do. Education has come a long way from the days of blackboards and chalk and erasers, and we have Promethean boards, which are incredible. And there was a purchase of a Promethean board and active panels. That's a big deal.
It was a big purchase, and we do have Promethean boards in every classroom. and we have had for a long time. Prior to about 4 or 5 years ago, we did not have a refresh cycle. So we do now. So we have certain sites that get their Promethean boards updated each cycle, and it's a 5-year cycle. And we've got some boards out there that are just in pitiful shape. They're not working well. So with our ESSER II funds, our CARES, Federal Coronavirus Relief Act funds, we're able to get caught up with Promethean boards. And just, if nothing else, distance learning taught us we have to be caught up. It's changed the landscape of education. So
Yeah, for sure. Well, the last thing we want to discuss on this edition of the board wrap up is Renovation Project. Ponca City Public Schools regularly working with folks like Kyler Construction. And this particular project we're going to talk about is a project with Rick Scott Construction.
right.
And can you give us an update?
Sure. And this is not a bond project. This is something we'll do out of building fund. The Social Security office over by West Middle School, we purchased that several years ago. Currently, our child nutrition program office is over in that area by Turtles. We own those buildings, and we've got future bond plans coming up for that entire area. So we are going to move child nutrition over to that Social Security building over by West School. We think it'll be easy access for parents, and the child nutrition offices will be there. It needs some remodel on the inside. We've got to change some walls up, but not a major project. But our board approved Rick Scott Construction to renovate that project. And as you know, we take bids on projects, and here's what we do. We do have a lot of project, and we have a lot of local support, and we try to balance our renovations and our projects between our construction managers here in town.
Yeah, for sure. Shelley Arrott, what a productive March Board of Education meeting, and we appreciate you giving us the comprehensive recap of that meeting. Thank you so much. All right, well, that's going to do it for this edition of the Board Wrap Up Show. I'm your host, Sean Anderson, and until next time, thanks for watching.